What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Layback Podcast. Joining us today is left-handed pitcher at Lindenwood University, aka AJ Jungers. AJ joins us today from his apartment house, whatever it is, with the blackout shades outside of St. Louis, Missouri. Bending from the cold, he just broke the news to me that the real feel this morning over there was 1 degree as he headed over to the weight room. So at least you knew he was grinding this morning and gave us the actual temperature as he left his house. But our Wisconsinite here, ex-hockey player turned left-handed pitcher, is gracious enough to hop on and tell his story. AJ has kind of been a trailblazer for FlexPro Grip to a certain extent. People have probably heard me mention this a time or two if we've gotten on conversations as one specific player who kind of broke our system or broke our algorithm in a way, which I am going to bury the lead. We'll get into this a little bit later, but AJ happened to be that guy. So because of AJ's injury and because of what he presented with his data, we completely changed what we do with FlexPro. So I've been waiting on this moment in this interview for a long time, but I'm ecstatic to say he has been back in game. He has thrown 6 innings, I believe, so far, completely scoreless, 2 hits. I don't remember how many hits it is.
I want to say I've given up three.
Three. I think I have the stat sheet right here, so we'll check real quick to make sure. So maybe we'll just read the stat line real quick to start the year. Don't want to jinx anything. It is 7 innings. My apologies. I shorted you on innings, but I also shorted you on hits allowed. So stat line so far: 2 appearances, 7 innings, 3 hits allowed, 2 walks, 7 punchies for a 125 batting average against. I would say that's a pretty good way to start the year, especially returning from Tommy John. So AJ, with that, I'm finally going to kick it over to you for the high-level bio. Thanks a ton for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Obviously, Wisconsinite, love the Packers. I grew up in Madison, Wisconsin. Actually committed to Lindenwood when they were still a Division II school. And then my junior year of high school, or senior year of high school, I got a call from the old head coach that we were going Division I, so that was really cool. Came down here a little far away from home, obviously, so that was tough being away, but have enjoyed my past 4 years being here. Obviously, last year was a bit of a bump in the road with the whole injury, but like you said, being a trailblazer, it's unfortunate that the injury had to happen, but it's also a really cool experience and life story that I can tell people that, I am basically patient zero when it comes to RFD testing and training. As far as my family goes, I have 2 brothers, one older who played college baseball, and then I have a younger brother as well who didn't like baseball in a baseball family, but loved to golf, so I'd always go out with him. My mom and my dad have been my biggest supporters in my life and a big reason why I'm back on the mound right now and very confident. And other than that, just living life right now.
Well, I'll toss one other bio piece that I happen to know about you that probably will add a little bit of context to even some of the discussion that we have today. I know you're super passionate about sports performance, kinesiology, physiology, beyond just your career. But part of the reason you were going to the weight room this morning is for your internship. I would love for you to kind of explain that and what it is beyond the baseball field that really interests you as well.
Yeah, so when I was growing up, especially with hockey, one of my best buddies back in Madison, his dad is the performance director over at UW Health Sports Performance. Throughout high school, that's where I went to train, and that's where my liking of the field really grew. And last summer was actually my first internship with him. And so that's where I kind of got my foot in the door of, all right, well, this is what the hours look like. This is programming and stuff like that. But for this semester, I'm working at the Lindenwood weight room. And I won't lie, it's a very busy schedule, very busy schedule. But like I said, I was up at 4 this morning, got into the weight room at 5, helped out with football. And then right before I hopped on here with you, I was with men's volleyball. But I think the most interesting part for me is seeing how all the different strength coaches program for their different athletes and the different opinions and philosophies that they use. There's a million different ways that you can make an athlete stronger, faster, and more powerful. And I think the thing that I have enjoyed the most is talking to each and every single one of them and seeing their different opinions on it.
So growing up, having this interest in sports performance, did that lead you to be a big time experimenter or just a gym rat? How did you kind of fall in love with the weight room? I obviously understand your exposure to it with the UW health side of things and training for hockey, but what was that moment that you really fell in love, and kind of what was your approach with training in general for so long?
I would say that I was more of a gym rat in high school, especially during COVID. That's when I started to go to the gym all the time. Obviously, a lot of the gyms in Madison were closed, so my dad actually configured our basement into a little at-home gym. And so when I first started lifting pretty heavily, it was like you would see in any commercial gym, just trying to lift as much weight as you possibly could, and you didn't care about form. You wanted to see as much weight on the bar as possible.
And
And
I'm assuming for as many reps as possible too. Just
yep, absolutely.
extreme volume, extreme weight.
Absolutely. So obviously not the best way to go about it, but as I continued to grow older and talk with his name's Dave Knight, UW Health Sports Performance. When I started talking to him more, that's when I kind of found out about progressions, the different intensities that you want to use for different sets and reps. And so that's when it shifted more towards trying to be athletic and move properly through a full range of motion. And then with that, progressing properly by adding, 5 to 10 pounds per week on a squat instead of just trying to see how many reps I could get of a certain number.
You did mention trying to be a little more athletic. I know you are currently listed as not only a left-handed pitcher, but also an outfielder. Have you ever had an at-bat in your Lindenwood career?
No, I have not. And I actually do have a pretty funny story about that. So I came in my freshman year as a two-way. That's the reason why it's listed as a pitcher and outfielder. But I was actually never told to my face that I was only going to be a PO. Uh, it,
So you're
it,
still waiting on
I
the
am
opportunity.
still waiting. I'm still waiting for that AB. But my practice plan came out in November of my freshman year, and I look at the hitting groups and didn't see my name on it. And obviously as a freshman, you're like, well, if my name's not on the practice sheet, like apparently I'm gonna have to go have a talk with the head coach. And so I go into the office and I talked with the head coach and my pitching coach, and what I was told was they're going to let other people get some more reps, and then later on throughout winter break is when I'll start to be integrated back again into the hitting groups. And as you know by now, I've still haven't been integrated yet, so I'm waiting for my opportunity still.
Well, the other guys are still getting their reps in.
Yeah, obviously,
Yeah.
obviously. But I'm just trying to be a team player at this point and help out the boys.
That's right. There was probably a little bit of you last year while you were on the sideline, the arm not working so well that you're thinking like maybe this is the time. Do I start picking up the bat?
Oh, there's definitely some thoughts going through my mind about that, but as the years have gone on, I've grown a huge liking into golf. I didn't want to mess up my golf swing personally, so I would keep my swings at the driving range and on the course.
Do you golf lefty or righty?
I golf righty. I golf righty.
Were you
So
a right-handed hockey player?
I was, and I swung the bat righty as well.
So you're that weird.
Yes, I am very weird, very weird.
Think there's been one major leaguer ever. One of the LaRoche brothers was a left-handed thrower, right-handed hitter. Maybe there's others, but I know it's just super uncommon to be
Yeah,
a left-handed thrower, right-handed hitter. And I know for a fact, one of the LaRoche brothers fell into that crop.
yeah, yeah. So probably a good thing that I'm a PO right now and just focusing on the golf game instead of in the box.
And I guess even the fact that you were so into hockey does really interest me. That is, I think, a larger crossover than most people realize, that the hockey baseball combo, especially for Minnesota, Wisconsin, and New England born players. When did you make the decision that baseball was going to be the push instead of hockey?
So I'd say that was probably my sophomore year of high school. And that summer, I had like a huge jump in velo on the mound. Obviously, me playing summer ball with GRB up in Wisconsin, that was a talk with the coaches of like, hey, you're progressing pretty good. You have a good shot of going and getting recruited and playing college baseball. I think that's when my mind started to shift. And then my junior year was when COVID hit. And so I didn't play hockey my junior year winter. And that's when I really started to focus on one, the weight room, and two, baseball. But I played my senior year of high school, and that was honestly more just to have fun with the boys, one little last hoorah. But yeah, I would definitely say sophomore year was when my mind started to shift.
Let's now jump forward into the actual baseball career at Lindenwood and kind of explain, I guess, set the stage for where we are now. Your freshman year, you got a fair share of appearances, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, yeah, and it does help that I was the only lefty in the bullpen, obviously.
Nobody
So
needs to know that. It
yeah,
was because of
yeah,
your ability, right? Not because
uh-huh,
of need.
absolutely. But yeah, I mean, I've always been a command pitcher rather than a hard thrower. It's definitely taken me some time to get that velo, but obviously, I think that's one of the biggest strengths that I have on the mound is, if you want to pitch low and away, like I will get it there, or if I need to have a slider or ball off or a back foot slider, like I'll be able to put it there. And so I think that's what propelled me into getting so many appearances my freshman year was being able to command the strike zone. And then obviously if we're going to mention it, the fact that I was the only lefty, but there were definitely some growing pains freshman year, and then it progressed, and through the through my sophomore year, I still struggled a little bit during out of conference play, but then in conference play, that was when I kind of took that next step and really got comfortable.
It probably wasn't as big of a deal to you going from D2 to D1 because as soon as you step foot on campus, it was a D1 program. You were just stuck with playing teams that were deeper or had more total guys. But I'm guessing that's even part of what was a major strength of yours early on. I've been a part of programs that aren't as deep, and having guys that you know can throw strikes when you are down 6 runs just means so much because oftentimes it's about staying competitive more than it is about just throwing a guy out there that might be able to strike this guy out, but also might walk the next 4 guys in a row and hit another 2 in the head. You probably had this tremendous benefit of being kind of the perfect mold of a pitcher for a school that is transitioning.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And there's been a lot of resources that have been handed to this baseball team throughout the years. And so we we have studs now on this team that do throw the ball hard and are able to command it. So that's also nice that we have a lot more depth on this pitching staff.
It is really impressive. Now we'll take the story away from you and even talk about the staff as a whole. Just in your short time, I say short time at Lindenwood. I guess this is year 4 now. For me, it feels like a short time for how long I've actually known you. But I love if you could just kind of even explain to the masses that don't know as much about Lindenwood, aside from me just shouting out Lindenwood on meetings and stuff, how much your program, specifically as a pitching staff, has changed in the time you've been there.
Yeah, so I mean, I hate to give this man credit, as you know, but Denton McNamee is one hell of a pitching coach. I will give him that. I mean, as soon as Denton got hired sophomore year, first meeting that we had, he set the standards for the next 3 years and going on. I would say my freshman year it was kind of a feel it out type of season where we had a lot of seniors that were just kind of ready to be over with the season. We had a lot of young guys that were just trying to get experience under their belt. I was in that same boat of there were some games where I didn't really care how many runs I gave up. I just really wanted to pitch. But Denton set the expectation, set the standard. Lindenwood Division II has always been known as a pitching squad. I mean, we wanted to get back into those roots, obviously, and the stats throughout the season have shown that. Don't want to jinx anything, but I believe that our ERA right now is right at a 3. Myself included, we have 4 guys that have a 0 ERA. We have a couple more that are at a sub 3 right now. So, I mean, the biggest step that I would say that we've taken is being able to command the zone a lot. The transfers that we've got in, Seth Bennis, for example, absolute stud. He's gone 7 shutty the past 2 weekends, both. So right at 14 innings of no run ball. Josh Newell, obviously, as you know, OVC Pitcher of the Year last year and is continuing to make a statement for that rerun of it. Easton Rocker's my roommate. He's always been a stud since he stepped on campus. So there's so much depth on this pitching staff to where we could throw any guy in there and be super confident that we're going to win the game.
One thing in particular that I think speaks to the depth, and I can't remember if it's 2 years in a row for sure, but I'm pretty positive it is, that you guys have led the OVC in ERA as a staff 2 years in a row, which is amazing and certainly speaks to your ability to command the zone, as you said. Because right along with that, I know last year you guys had the lowest walk rate of any team, and I think you might have been second lowest 2 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. So our goal this year, so we led the OVC in conference play for ERA. I'm pretty sure you're right about the walks, but I would definitely have to double check that. But our goal for this year is to be the overall ERA leaders. I believe the past 2 years we have been like 4th and 5th in overall ERA. Obviously, with out of conference play, getting the feel for the season, it is difficult when you give up big numbers like that. But yeah, I mean, if we can go back to back to back, like we will set the standard from now on for one, our pitching staff, but two, the OVC as well.
Certainly. Well, that's probably enough about your boys. We're here to tell your story. So thank you to everyone else on the Lindenwood staff, but that's enough from you guys for now. So AJ, we'll take it back to kind of why we're here today. Unless there's something super eventful from your sophomore year, if you want to talk more about that progression, but let's kind of jump ahead to junior year if you feel it's time.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so going into the fall of junior year, you're coming off of a bunch of appearances as a sophomore. Definitely one of the stable, steadfast relievers coming out of the bullpen. You started to get a few starts, right? Didn't you have 3 or 4 starts your sophomore year?
Yes.
And you're trending junior year towards being one of the weekend dudes, correct?
Yes.
All right. So now I will stop asking leading questions and just hand it over to you at this point to kind of talk about the fall and maybe even where your head was at going into this promising spring.
Yeah, so obviously going into a new year, my mindset is always to be on the hunt for the next role. Going into my junior year, having that many appearances, I had made it my goal in that fall to be a starter, a weekend starter, I should say. So throughout the whole fall, obviously they keep the load down a little bit, so you really only get 1 to 2 innings per appearance in the fall. But there were definitely a lot of talks with Denton and PJ about being a potential starter, and that's what really fueled me throughout the fall. But then going into the spring, it that's when the throwing workload started to increase. You know, you're getting 3 to 4 innings preseason and inter squads, and that's where I felt like that was my time to shine. And then obviously with I think I want to say it was a week before the season was when the injury occurred.
So now I'll step back in for kind of the communication that I received from Denton and just, I guess, maybe providing the bird's eye view of how this played out. So for as many of the listeners probably know from me mentioning Lindenwood and FlexPro Grip for so long, we've been working with Denton in the Lindenwood crew for, I guess that was about one complete year at the time of your injury. I think we got started back in October of your sophomore year, if I'm
Yep.
not mistaken, maybe November of your sophomore year. So you guys had a really good system in place. It was a part of not only your routine, but the team as a whole. And we had monitored everything really well. I was on the phone with Denton regularly, helping him make, I don't want to say, I don't want to paint the picture like I was making bullpen decisions for him, but if data popped up that maybe suggested a guy might be a little fatigued or Denton had questions, we'd hop on the phone and we would discuss risk, situation. Perfect example, I believe, is I think even when you guys opened up the season at Dayton, which I think was your sophomore year, you guys played 4 games, it was 20 degrees, whatever, and then you immediately had a Tuesday game and a Wednesday game, and then went on the road again the next weekend. So you guys opened up with like 10 games in 7 days after not being outside at all. And Denton's hitting me up saying, like, all right, we just had a guy through 3 out of our first 5 games. And it looks like, based on rapid flexion testing data, his numbers are trending down a little bit. So, what do we want to do here? I think that just kind of paints the picture of how integrated FlexPro was into what you guys were doing as a whole. That even goes before saying what you're doing with shoulder dynamometry, what you're doing with workload management, force plate testing as well. So, really, just a robust system to assess player readiness. And I got the message from Denton saying AJ just went down. It makes no sense. I can't find out why. And as you said, it was legitimately like the last live before season started. It was the weekend before. I think it was on a Saturday, and Denton said you were going to be the Saturday starter. So it was literally the last prep before the season starts. And you go down. And then on our side, me, Daryl, the FlexPro Grip crew, we are then having to mine through every single thing you had ever done to figure out how this ever could have happened. And that's also the relationship, as I said, that we have with Denton and your staff, that they trust us to be a part of finding the solution. One thing that people know for sure from our side that we hate is trying to act like a soft tissue non-contact injury can't be pinpointed somewhere. People act like these things just happen. And maybe they do. Maybe that is your take, maybe that is the take of someone listening. But if we are going to do our job in preventing, greatly reducing the risk, whatever proper language you want to put on our mission to solve the UCL crisis, we will not rest until we have exhausted every possible data point, action, thing, whatever that we can to see if this could have been prevented. And from your side, force plates dialed, standard hand grip dynamometry dialed, shoulder dynamometry dialed, workload dialed, FlexPro Grip strength programs dialed. And then what we found, one little piece, your rate of force development was slow. Your peak numbers were tremendous, but for whatever reason, on your left arm, you were slow to produce that peak force. And it was literally one of one in our database. You presented data that we couldn't find anywhere else. And then we started scratching our heads and trying to figure out, is this legitimately the cause? And from there, I'll kind of turn it back to you before I speak for the next 20 minutes on how we went about this. But go ahead, take it on back for maybe how this was presented to you, or even how you felt after you found out you were hurt, or what you experienced. Because we just went straight to the data and problem solving route. I do want you to talk about the human side as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, I will say that that appearance that I tore, my UCL, it wasn't the best appearance that I've ever had. If I remember correctly, I gave up a 3 spot in the first inning. And then it was either the second or third batter of that second inning that it eventually popped. And going back with Denton, sitting in the clubhouse with him after that for 3+ hours, just trying to figure out what was wrong. we ultimately landed on it being a nerve issue. And maybe it was just my nerve flipping. And that's the reason that I felt it. Because as you said, like my force plate numbers, FlexPro Grip strength, the shoulder dynamometer, like everything kind of checked the boxes of, all right, like there's no reason that he should be injured right now. And then I want to say the following Monday is when I got my MRI and ended up showing up to practice after the MRI. And I'll never forget this. My trainer must have already gotten the call as soon as I got there. And I should have figured out that something was going to, be bad, but he put his hand on my shoulder and he's like, "Hey man, how are you doing?" Just in this soft little voice. And I was like, I'm doing pretty good. Like I went and got some noodles and company mac and cheese. Like I'm
And
feeling
that
pretty
stuff's
good.
gas.
It is. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
No free ads, but Noodles and
Yeah,
Company, if you want to sponsor the podcast,
it
totally on
is.
board.
It is really good. But after practice, that's when I sat down with the coaches and they're like, "Yeah, man, like, you blew it out fully." Like, and I think that's when the first wave of shock kind of hit me. And it was like, wow. Usually you never think that that's going to happen to you. And then as soon as it does, you're like, wow, like I can't believe it. And then that's when all the questions started to arise of like, then talking to you guys, obviously, talking to a couple of the PTs in the area as well about how this could possibly happen. And I remember when you guys found out that it was possibly the RFD, and I hopped on a Zoom call with Daryl, and Daryl made me do it in front of him. Uh, did it, did it as you guys say that we should, and then I'll never forget
Quick
Daryl.
timeout, quick timeout. I got to make sure that I cover some bases here. We first made sure that you had no pain doing anything and
True,
you were willing to do this to try to
true.
solve a problem or find an answer. I don't want anyone to think that we were just like, "Oh yeah, you're hurt. You can't get more hurt. Here, just go do this."
Yes, yes. You guys did check to see, it was all voluntary and I had no pain with it. But I remember Daryl doing it, and I want to say Daryl got like a better than me. And I just looked at him and I was like, wow. Like no, no shot to Daryl or anything, but as
Yeah.
a 21-year-old college athlete, you would think that I would have a better RFD number than him. So yeah, I mean, after that, I mean, honestly, after surgery, I can't remember how many months out it was, but I mean, we just hammered power rehab, just
Well,
hammered.
I'm going to call another quick time out there because one thing that I think is super important to address is yes, Daryl had you do this on your left arm, your injured arm. And then I can't remember if it was the same call or if it was a couple days later, we had you test on your right arm to see if this was a systemic across the board issue or if this was truly just your left arm. And lo and behold, it was just your left arm. And this happened to be the first time Daryl and I gained knowledge of the ulnar nerve issues that you may have had in high school.
Yep, yep, yeah. So my junior year of high school, I was told that it was a strained UCL. Obviously, looking back at it, it was definitely a nerve injury. And so I think that, as you and I have discussed before, like it wasn't a question of will it happen, it was a question of when it will happen, and so obviously finding that out is not the best news. But yeah, I would definitely say that the nerve issues in high school definitely played a part.
And what I find so unique here, again, I hate to kill your momentum, and you were talking about hammering power rehab and starting to get into the rehab process. But now, when we have seen other athletes present with either a similar case as you, like if maybe they haven't trained on FlexPro, but they tested and had good numbers or something like that, and have cited elbow pain, we're immediately going to that RFD test. Or anytime an athlete has said, I previously had ulnar nerve transposition or a nerve injury, we're going to RFD right away to see if that is a potential problem. And what is absolutely mind boggling to me is we have seen that come to fruition time and time again. And had we not found this weird data point in your testing, your training, we wouldn't be looking at this right now. So this is the trailblazer story that we were teasing at the front of the podcast. But AJ, go ahead, take it away again as you kind of start to get into, I guess before we even talk about the power rehab, the surgery. Because at this point, you haven't even had surgery yet. This is just getting on a fact-finding call and us trying to use you somewhat as a guinea pig to figure out what possibly could we have missed.
Yeah. So obviously, after I found out, there were a bunch of phone calls that had to be made. One to my family, and two with Mercy, just trying to figure out when surgery was. And I'm very thankful that I was able to get in. I want to say it was about 2.5 weeks after it happened. So I mean, I got in pretty good. My surgeon, Shaylin Koch, uh, awesome man, and will forever be thankful that he was the one who did my surgery. But I ended up getting the repair surgery with a nerve transposition. And then, you know, don't really remember a lot from surgery day, obviously. I was pretty loopy that day, but very thankful I was because I did not want to feel that pain. But yeah, I mean, that was square one of the long journey. Looking back at it, it doesn't really feel that long. It was it was definitely a mental battle at the start rather than a physical for me.
Not that you have to get too deep or disclose too much on this, but mental battle with how you juggled rehab or mental battle with just kind of the identity crisis that comes with kind of being at the top of your game to then losing the sense of self.
Yeah, I would say it was definitely a mental battle of rehab, and then the identity crisis came in waves. Right after surgery, I'd say both were pretty high. Both were pretty high because coming off of the best season that I had at college, you're looking forward to progressing even more and, obviously in my situation, becoming a starter. And it felt like I just took a million steps back from that point. And so that was definitely a tough hit on the mental side. But throughout rehab, the issue that I usually had was a tight bicep. The mental battle with that of having to look at my arm 3 months out from surgery and I'm still waking up with it at 90 degrees and it takes me 15 minutes to finally get it all stretched out. Like that's when the thoughts come back in of like, hey man, like you're putting all this work in and you're killing it in rehab, but like will you make it back to where you were? And then leading up to the season, that was a big identity crisis as well. That's when you start to figure out who you're going to be, what role you're going to have on the team, and you really don't know how you're going to progress and excel until you actually get on that mound. So there were definitely a lot of jitters on that mound in Pine Bluff.
I'm sure, but that day in Pine Bluff, I think worked out just about as
Yeah,
well as it
yep.
possibly could for a debut.
Yes. That is true.
Well, before we get to the debut, I also want to take some time to talk about your return to throw and kind of the unique parts of your rehab in general. You mentioned doing a ton of power work, which for us is the rate of force development rehab component. And of course, you were doing your FlexPro Grip rehab, like standard percent of max work and progressing you the long holds, all of that. I know you're super passionate about the weight room. You got right back to that and crushing strength, like general awareness kind of stuff right away. You were really dialed in on that front. But from a throwing perspective, once you ultimately got cleared after someone had you throw a tennis ball at like week 14, which might have been a little bit of a head scratcher at a time, but a few weeks after that, maybe it was around the 20-week post-op mark, we actually got started on a return to throw, and you took a little bit of a different approach to a return to throw than we see across most elbow injuries, at least at that time.
Yeah. So I remember having a Zoom call that day, which it was supposed to be day one of throwing. And at that point, that's when the nerves and the jitters kind of kicked in. And like, I'll be honest, like picking up a baseball and trying to throw it for the first time after the last time you threw one was when you blew it out. It's tough. And so I was honest with you guys during that call of like, hey man, like I've checked the return to throw sheet that you guys have given me. absolutely love it, but I'll be honest with you guys, like I need a day here to just kind of feel it out. I was very thankful that you guys were able to give me that day, and that definitely helped with the confidence of everything. But the return to throw that I was given from you guys was definitely something that I've never seen before. I think the way that you guys calculated the acute to chronic workload differently than what Pulse usually does was very helpful, because if I was just going straight off of the Pulse workload, I probably would have had to cut half of those days short just because the workload would have been too high. I would say for the first month, I based it solely off of arm speed just because I was back home and didn't have a radar gun with me yet. And then after the first week, still in July, I want to say, that's when I got sent a radar gun, and then I was able to base it off of those velo buckets that we had off of the max velo.
I think you bringing up the arm speed component is a tremendous stop for us right now on this interview. And the reason I say that is you are a guy who consistently throws with higher arm speeds than expected for a given velocity. And I remember that being a little bit of a tough jump for you in those first couple of weeks, moving from solely arm speed based throwing to velocity guided throwing. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't want to call it a setback, but if I'm not mistaken, you kind of had to take a little bit of time, maybe plateauing your rehab, and not necessarily deloading, but plateauing the program and spending a couple of weeks at maybe a given level just because of where we thought you might be at, based on the standard arm speed to velocity ratios or calculations. You weren't quite there. So the velocity jumps were getting a little bit tougher for you in that mid to late July time.
Yeah, and that's right around when I got the radar gun sent to me. And so that shift towards basing it off of velocity now rather than arm speed, like I want to say I either texted you or Den, and I had like a spike in arm speed of like 300. With my background in strength and conditioning and then talking with you guys all the time, like I know that that in a rehab setting is not ideal at all. And so I think that's what scared me the most of, one, why is my arm speed so high with this certain velocity? That was definitely a concern of like, all right, well, I'm never going to be able to throw hard again. Uh, Thankfully, that's not true anymore. And then two, just from a health perspective of like, if I'm going to be making these spikes in arm speed, like this early on in the throwing program, like that definitely isn't ideal. And I did have a little bit of pain throwing right around like the low 70s, I want to say, when I crept up into that. And like you said, we kind of plateaued in the mid to high 60s for a little bit. And then once we got comfortable more with throwing, that's when we started to progress a lot more.
And another thing worth noting, I had the benefit of seeing this on the inside with you sending some video. At that time, the way you were throwing had almost completely changed. And there were inklings of the old AJ in there, but you could see some very corrosive habits or patterns that had begun to form. And I'm sure a lot of it stemmed from the mental struggles that you were feeling or your apprehension that comes from, is this going to be the throw that I feel it again, or that kind of nagging bicep pain that you experienced.
Yep.
And what really stinks is those patterns that you often like fall into to try to protect yourself are also the very patterns that are creating greater discomfort or pain because you're no longer moving fluidly or naturally, and you're actually adding stress to the system.
Yep. Yeah, and so once that occurred, sent you guys some videos, sent Den some videos, and then basically we came up with a bunch of constraint throws for me to do because I mean early on, like I was going basically out of the stretch, right? And going through my motion, but the pushing of the arm, not getting into layback, couple issues with the lower body as well of like
Stepping across your body, front foot way open to try to allow for rotation, never
yep,
lead leg blocking, love arm flying way
yep,
way the
yep.
frick open.
It was
It was rough.
it was rough. Thankfully, it's not like that anymore, and we finally figured it out. But yeah, I would say those constraint throws really got me back. Really got me back on the road. The more and more I got comfortable with the arm and the higher velocity, that's when we started to get back to proper mechanics.
And another piece of this whole thing is you did more or less the beginning couple of months of your throwing program alone,
Yes, I
which
did.
which is another huge struggle. You didn't have the boys with you. You didn't have the athletic trainer. You didn't have Denton. You didn't have whoever. Like, yeah, you had the support system in your family, and maybe dad filmed a few of your throws or something, or a brother might have, or played catch with someone in the family. But it's different to have that versus like having a Lindenwood t-shirt on the left field line going to make a throw.
Yeah, yeah. I will say I have to shout out a couple of people. Tyler Kraft, who was the guy in the video of my first throw. Very thankful to him for catching that ball. My brothers Kyle and Owen, Tyler Schmidt as well, Sam Knight,
KJ and OJ.
TJ and OJ, yeah. Yeah, or KJ, I should say. KJ. But
I wasn't sure if they also had J nicknames as
well,
well.
we do call Owen Juice for Owen.
Good,
So
good.
that is juice. But I'm very thankful that those guys were willing to basically drop a lot of their daily activities in order to come over to my house and throw with me. I do remember I did go to Target and buy a tripod, so that was what held the camera most of the times. And then I had an old golf net that I would set up and throw into with the radar gun behind. And so yeah, that was definitely one of the struggles that I had to face early on, was kind of being by myself for the most part, of just throwing by myself and having to wonder, like, am I are my mechanics good? Obviously they
They
weren't,
weren't.
and we figured it out. But once I stepped onto campus, we have a couple of guys here that have gone through the same surgery and the same rehab that I went through. And so that was a huge step that I took on the mental side and physical side of being able to hear everybody else's experiences and realizing that the issues that I faced are the same ones that everybody else has faced before, right? Like the wonky mechanics that you see when you're return to throw, the wall that you hit with different certain velocities, and you feel like you're throwing it at 110%, yet the radar gun says that you're throwing it super slow. And
It
so,
says 74 for the fourth week
exactly.
in a row.
So having those guys there down here on campus really helped me keep on course and realize that I will get back to how I was.
Exploring the fall a little bit more. When do you feel and maybe it wasn't the fall, that you kind of made the shift of I am rehabbing to I am a pitcher on this staff?
I would honestly say that that shift didn't happen until mid-December, which obviously, if you're listening to this, you're like, I don't know, you only had about, a month and a half to get ready for the season like that. But Denton and I really, really focused on mound work pretty early in my return to throw. I want to say it was late August that I started to, have one foot on the mound, one foot off, and kind of feel out the slope like that with the velo. But talking about hitting the walls with the velocity, right? Like, I remember getting stuck at 75 miles per hour, 80 miles per hour. There was a point where I couldn't throw a ball harder than 83. And so adding those different stimuluses, one of feeling like it's a bullpen, and two, having a hitter in there facing you live. I think it was mid-December when I faced my first hitter, that the Friday before I couldn't throw a ball harder than 82. And then as soon as I had somebody in there, my first fastball was like 88. And so making that jump, obviously, you're like, all right, man, like it's go time now. But yeah, I would definitely say that mid-December was when it shifted into, all right, let's stop velo chasing right now. Let's actually work on the command and getting all the pitches down.
Do you feel like that freed you up a little bit?
Yeah, yeah, I would absolutely say that it freed me up. Even with like a recovery day of throwing. Those didn't feel so strenuous anymore because I knew that I was able to throw harder than what I had been previously. If we compare it to like a November recovery day, there were some days where it felt like I was still getting after it pretty good, while throwing it 65 miles per hour. Now, throwing it now at 65 miles per hour, it feels like I'm just flicking the ball at this point. So having that stimulus definitely freed me up and made me feel a lot more confident.
I regret to insert this now. We probably should have talked about it a little bit earlier, maybe a question or two before, so we're not that far off. But another kind of different part of your throwing program that you went through, as opposed to most rehabs that you'll see, is right away you started with 4 day a week throwing, and then relatively quickly even went to 5 day a week throwing with optional 6 days getting mixed in. How did that impact you, I guess, as you moved on? Maybe not so much at the beginning because it's all workload management principles. You can do that with however much throwing you want. But how did you feel that impacted you both physically as well as mentally? Did you ever feel it tough to add those low intensity or recovery days in? And then maybe on the mental side, did that ever help you feel a little bit more like one of the guys since you weren't just showing up to the field and standing with your hands in your pockets?
Yeah, I would say definitely from the physical side, it was tough to start off just going right into 4 days a week. And that does speak volume on the mental side of things as well, of not being as confident in yourself and not trusting that you won't re-injure yourself again. But I will say, as time went on, it was very beneficial to throw 4 days a week right off because as soon as I added that fifth day, it really just felt like any other day. And then having those two high intent throwing days and the volume that came with it, obviously that kind of built up my workload a little bit, but it also built up my endurance as well. It was definitely tough at the start to kind of do those shuffle throws and get a velo. But yeah, I mean, it definitely helped. And then on the mental side of things, like it just made me even more confident in my ability to throw pain free, but then also to kind of let the arm loose a little bit as well. Since instead of having to gauge how my arm felt throwing only 2 to 3 times a week, I was able to gauge how it felt day to day almost with throwing. And all right, like I just had a high intent day yesterday and I feel amazing right now. And I have to throw, like I'm super confident in myself, or just knowing that my body is able to handle that amount of throwing so early on was very beneficial.
And then you didn't get stuck having to make a transition, which I think a lot of athletes kind of struggle with. They're working in these throwing programs, and maybe it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday for the longest time. And then it becomes a really big deal when it turns to 4 days a week. And then it's a really big deal when all of a sudden you have like a bullpen day versus for you from the beginning, you legitimately had high days and low days. And then you flash forward to December or January and you've had two high intent days per week literally since you started throwing. So transitioning back into like a more standard pitching schedule probably didn't even enter your mind. Maybe the hitter stepping in the box changed something or wearing baseball pants changed something, but the actual throwing that you experience really didn't change all that much.
Yeah, I really didn't notice the increase of volume or intensity. I would say intensity a little bit more than volume, but there came a day where I had to make 100 throws, and I'm like, geez, I'm already making 100 throws. I remember the other week, it was only up to like 65 or something like that. And so, absolutely, throwing 4 days a week that early, like you really don't realize the amount of volume that you're increasing 2 months from now. So.
We've probably exhausted a good bit of the throwing program unless you think there's things that we're missing that you experience. Of course, I see it from a sheet of paper, a spreadsheet on a computer or something. You actually live it and breathe it and feel it daily, but I think you did a good job explaining it. I would like, if you feel comfortable, to kind of make the transition now to getting into game shape again especially mentally. So what that January was like gearing up for the season, and also probably even going into those first weeks of February, maybe the kind of traumatic buildup of knowing that season's around the corner, but we're also about to approach my 1 year injury date.
Yeah. So I want to say that the game last year that I tore my elbow, I ended up throwing on that day for inter squad. And so that was a big day for me mentally. There was definitely a lot of doubt in how I was going to perform that day, but I think I went out and threw two scoreless in an inter squad. And so I would say gearing up for the season, there's definitely a lot of jitters of you throw inside all the time. And as you probably know, there are a bunch of hitters out there that make tons of excuses about lighting, background. It doesn't really feel like an actual field, so that's why we aren't hitting. But definitely stepping out on the mound here at Lindenwood for the first time before the season was really exciting, but also very nerve-wracking. But even in my first game, hearing my name over the radio saying, let's get Jungers going. We're thinking about, putting him in the sixth inning here. Let's have him play catch. Like the thoughts of doubt start to slowly creep in right there. And then as you're jogging out to the mound, it's like, all right, man, it's go time. But like, are we ready for this type of thing? And so I would say that this past week was the first time that I was fully confident in myself
Wow.
and didn't have any doubts whatsoever of me re-injuring my arm or me having a bad outing.
Why do you think it was so difficult for you to silence the negative thoughts?
Yeah, which I do want to make a note of this. I ended up getting the win on Friday last week, and that was 1 year ago from me being under the knife for surgery. And so
Wow.
that was also a really cool milestone that I had. Um, But yeah, I mean, there were a ton of nights where I would stay up and just think. And obviously, as we know, the human brain can think forever. And at some point throughout your rehab and having those struggles in rehab as well, those doubts start to kick in. And obviously, there's a couple of bumps in the road throughout throwing as well of, you don't have it one day where you feel like you can't throw a strike or you can't hit a certain number on velo. And so I think my problem a little bit is I'm a thinker and I love to know why we're doing this, why is it beneficial? I love to think. I love to think. And so I think that's the the downside to that is once I start to think a little bit too much, that's when the doubts start to creep in. So,
Sadly, you were in a lot of positions to spend a lot of time thinking.
yes. Yes. Yeah, I mean it's definitely been a battle on the mental side, honestly more than the physical, because I would say that my body was ready before the mental side was. As I said before, the doubts creeping in on the first week of the season.
So now, given your position and what you experienced, what might you share with someone else that's juggling with a similar situation?
I would say if you could shut your brain off for a little bit, I'd definitely do that. But honestly, just trying to get your mind off of it. I have a great group of guys that I live with down here, and they were very helpful in inviting me to stuff, even though like I couldn't play basketball for a long time, or I couldn't go golfing until the summer. And so just hanging out with them and being able to get my mind off of the fact that I'm in a brace still or I can't do certain activities was very helpful. But then to also take a step back and realize how far you've come, right? Like being under the knife, not being able to move your arm because of a nerve blocker right after surgery, to being able to do a push up again. In the grand scheme of things, people may not see doing a push up as a big step, but when you're not able to move your arm 3 months prior, like that's a that's a huge step in rehab.
Now we're gonna act like we haven't had any discussion about rehab because we gotta flush that. We gotta flush all these thoughts and focus on the season and the performance and really this awesome start you've had to the year. Even walk me through that first outing down at Pine Bluff. Your name gets called. You talked about being nervous when you hear your name over radio, but to be fair, you'd probably be nervous if it was your first appearance of the year anyways, and
Yep.
you're so excited about what can happen and all the work that you put in. So when you step foot on the mound, did you black out? Did you forget about everything else? What does that look like for you?
I will say that first inning I definitely blacked out. Definitely. I think going 1, 2, 3, like, it felt like I was out on that mound for about a second. And so I think I had my first strikeout in that first inning as well. And so that felt like a big moment for me. But I would say that after the second inning, I kind of started to settle down a little bit. Eighth inning was not the best. That I tried to make the game a little too interesting at that point. But I think I think for me, I'm a big guy who loves a challenge, right? Like if I have to make up a competitive battle in my mind, then I will absolutely have to. And so that's it's one of the strengths that I have as a pitcher is to get my mind on the task at hand. And so when I'm out of that mound, it's either I'm blacking out or I'm not actually, but I'm coming for your head here. I'm going to win this battle no matter what.
Kind of that Nick Saban mindset in a sense. It doesn't matter how much better you are than the person that you're facing. You are finding a way to get motivation from the situation or as you said, kind of the competitive edge that's going to drive you in this situation.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm also big on showing emotion, as you probably know as well. You let out a couple of screams in big situations, but yeah, I mean, I want to have as much fun as I possibly can on that mound, and in my mind, me having fun is watching you walk back to that dugout.
You showing emotion has been really interesting for me to kind of like learn and discover in this short-ish time I've had getting to know you, especially knowing that this podcast is kind of the perfect example. Not that you're monotone, but pretty even keeled when you're just telling a story. There's not a lot of emoting. Maybe we'll get a little smirk or a little chuckle here and there, but we're not getting boisterous acts of emotional outbursts. And then, as I said on Instagram the other day, we're here for our weekly AJ fist pump. We got to hit our weekly quota, and it's so fun to see that you kind of can flip the switch or put on this alter ego when you go out on the mound and enter compete mode.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like I've been told a bunch of times that I can be monotone, but really like to keep a cool head in a lot of situations and not let my emotions get the best of me outside of the field, obviously. But yeah, when I'm on the mound, it definitely feels like a switch. The switch is on and I'm ready to compete. And obviously in those big situations, like if I win that battle, I'm gonna let the whole world know that I won that battle.
As you should. That's what makes these things fun. And there's probably a small aspect of you knowing what you yourself went through and what you've experienced. How could you keep that bottled up?
Yeah. Yeah. I hate to admit this, but the first week there were definitely a couple of tears that were shed after that first outing. And obviously rightfully so. I mean, that was the toughest battle that I had to face throughout a year, having to sit there on the sidelines and watch the boys that I've gone to battle with for the past 3 years have to do it by themselves and me not being able to go out there and help out the team. And so I'm I'm very thankful for the support staff that's here. I'm very thankful for my family. Obviously very thankful for FlexPro and everything that you guys have done for me. But yeah, I mean, I just it definitely meant a lot to me.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. That's awesome. And we're honored to be a part of your team and whatever capacity that is. Really has been great getting to work with you and the team as a whole. And I was even prior to you answering that question, going to get to the point of saying, AJ, we've kind of covered a ton here. I don't know what else there is. That's kind of like a perfect mic drop response, at least on the whole, I guess, the whole elbow surgery process. To me, that really puts a bow on it. So before I do let you go, what else are we looking forward to this year? Early on, we kind of talked about the team goals, what you guys are striving for. You guys are finally postseason eligible this year. So is that kind of the big talk around the dugout and the clubhouse these days?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously, you always have your individual goals, but at some point when you start the season, right, like all you're looking for is to get that next win. And so I would say that my goal right now is winning next Friday. But as the season goes, I would definitely say that one of the pitching staff's goals is to have that ERA title again for in conference and for overall as well. But then, as any college baseball team would have, it would be to be OVC champs and then to go to a regional. After that, you never know what could happen.
That's right. We've seen some Cinderellas make Omaha before. Let's face it, if you guys continue to do it the way that you have done it, winning with great pitching and extremely good defense, that generally plays pretty well in the postseason.
Yes.
So, I'll be rooting for the Lions. I love what you guys have done, and I really love being a part of the team. And it's been awesome to grow alongside you guys and really develop what we do with you guys because you were believers early on. So, AJ, potentially the toughest question. Do you think there's anything that we've missed that we need to cover?
I think there's one thing, and
Okay.
I'm gonna see if you remember this, but I do remember you mentioning naming an RFD readiness protocol after me. And that is my final question for you is
Where
if
are we on that?
yeah, if and when will that be a thing on the app?
If yes, it will be at some point, at least in the literature. Now, I don't know if we can put it in the app because to be fair, I don't know how many people will see Aaron Youngers or AJ Youngers on something and be like, "Oh
That is
yeah,
true.
that's the protocol I should do." But there is no question we will find a way, whether it's in the database or in on the website or in our materials somewhere, we will give you a shout out. You have 100% earned that, and you have the right to have your name in the history books when it comes to that. So, yes, I do remember us telling you that you will be a part of that forever. There's no question we share your name and what you have done every time we have this discussion with someone. So, at least in spoken word, it's already come to fruition, but we will find a way to get this in writing at some point. So, we will say it is not a matter of if, it is a matter of when. And I guess we will make sure that you approve of however we've incorporated your name.
Might have to be under the frequently asked questions on the website.
Why do you do this? And then we'll just tell you what, we'll just put your phone number under why do we do this, and you can just tell the story.
Yeah, that'll be fun when I get a call at 1 in the morning about why we're doing this.
Yeah, yeah. One of our Japanese partners gives you a ring and it's at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, and you just have
Yep.
no idea what's going on.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
All right. So was that the only thing you feel we hadn't covered?
I believe so. I
All
believe
right.
so.
So at this point, I owe you a massive thank you for hopping on. This was tremendous to hear your story. I appreciate you getting vulnerable and sharing the tougher moments as well as the big victories in your not just return to play, but true return to performance. It's been awesome to be a part of and great to get to know you in the process. And of course, to everyone out there, thanks for laying back with us and go Lions.
Go Lions.